Have you ever wondered what's happening behind the scenes of the world we see? Behind the headlines of devastating wildfires in Los Angeles, controversial speeches in Hollywood, and a troubling rise in religious intolerance, there's a pattern. It's no coincidence, it's a warning, a hidden message that few can perceive. While many ignore it, others recognize that something much greater is at play. What if I told you that all of this connects to a spiritual battle that has spanned centuries? Bold claim, isn't it? But believe me, once you understand what's really going on, your view of the world will never be the same. We're not just talking about isolated events, but clear signs pointing to deeper issues that impact not only the present, but the destiny of humanity as a whole. Before we dive in, take a moment to subscribe to the channel. This way, you can help more people access these powerful reflections. Like, comment, and share, because what we're about to explore could change lives. Now grab your Bible, prepare your heart, and join me on this journey to uncover the hidden warnings that are all around us. The wildfires in Los Angeles aren't just natural disasters. They're stark reminders of our fragility as human beings and the uncontrollable power of nature. Picture the scene: entire neighborhoods reduced to ashes, families evacuating in haste as the flames consume everything in their path. These almost surreal images leave no doubt that something bigger is happening. For many, the lingering question is, are these wildfires merely the result of climate change, or could they be signs of something deeper, like spiritual warnings? After all, how can one not associate such destruction with the apocalyptic scenarios described in Matthew 24:7, which says, "There will be famines and earthquakes in various places." Think for a moment about the impact of these catastrophes on everyday life. People in these areas face immense material losses and, more importantly, emotional traumas that may last a lifetime. Amid all this, a crucial question arises: how can we rebuild, both physically and spiritually? Many find solace in Psalm 46:1, which says, "God is our refuge and strength, a very present help in trouble." It's fascinating to note how, in times of crisis, the search for faith and purpose grows exponentially, revealing that even in ashes, there is hope. Moreover, we can't ignore the connection between these events and social and environmental issues. Climate change has been a recurring theme in global discussions, and the tragedies in LA not only reinforce the need for concrete actions, but also challenge us to reflect on our role as stewards of creation. Genesis 2:15 reminds us that God entrusted humanity with the care of the earth, something we often neglect. The result? We pay the price, sometimes with high interest. But what about the spiritual significance of these events? Many theologians see natural disasters as a wake-up call, a reminder that this world is not eternal and that our priorities need re-evaluation. Proverbs 19:21 says, "Many are the plans in a person's heart, but it is the Lord's purpose that prevails." Perhaps, amidst the chaos of the fires, there's a call to return to God and realign our lives with what truly matters. Finally, it's worth asking how we, as individuals and as a society, can respond to tragedies of this magnitude. Are we ready to offer help to those who have lost everything? Donating time, resources, or even prayers can be more powerful than we imagine. And for those who live far from the affected areas, there are valuable lessons to learn about empathy, resilience, and purpose. After all, who guarantees that tomorrow we won't face something just as devastating? Hollywood, the famed dream factory, often becomes a battlefield when it comes to faith. It's almost ironic how Christianity, with its message of love and redemption, often faces resistance in a place that should be the pinnacle of creative expression. This isn't a coincidence. The video highlights an important point. In John 15:18-19, Jesus warned that the world would hate those who follow him. Isn't that exactly what we see? Movies mocking Christian faith, award shows celebrating messages contrary to biblical values, and the constant marginalization of anyone who dares to express their beliefs. Why does this happen? Some argue it's a cultural issue, while others see it as spiritual, and that perspective makes sense. Ephesians 2:2 refers to the prince of the power of the air, identifying Satan as the one who influences this world's systems. When we observe Hollywood, it becomes clear that there's a prevailing narrative. Values contrary to the Bible are applauded, while Christian principles are treated with disdain. Think of recent ironic speeches at award shows, where public figures mock God on national television, while those who defend faith are labeled as fanatics. The impact of this extends beyond the screens. The resistance to faith not only shapes culture, but also silences voices that could transform lives. How many actors or directors have abandoned their Christian values for fear of backlash? Mel Gibson is an example of someone who fought this battle. Known for openly expressing his faith, he faced widespread criticism in Hollywood. Yet, his bold stance reflects Romans 1:16. For I am not ashamed of the gospel, because it is the power of God that brings salvation to everyone who believes. For those who think this resistance is only a Hollywood problem, it's worth reflecting. How many times have you felt difficulty expressing your faith in your workplace, school, or even among family? What happens in the entertainment world is merely a reflection of what many Christians face daily. It's a spiritual battle that demands courage, wisdom, and above all, trust in God. So here's an invitation. What if, instead of criticizing Hollywood for its resistance to faith, we started praying for transformation in this space? Prayer has the power to break barriers, and perhaps that's exactly what's missing to inspire more voices willing to speak about Christ in one of the world's most influential places. After all, as James 5:16 says, the prayer of a righteous person is powerful and effective. And this leads us to an even deeper point about the spiritual war we face every day. The spiritual war is a theme that spans centuries and, though invisible, profoundly shapes the reality we live in. Many see the world's chaos, persecutions, disasters and conflicts as mere natural or social events. However, Ephesians 6:12 offers another perspective. For our struggle is not against flesh and blood, but against the powers of this dark world. It's fascinating to think that while we deal with day-to-day challenges, spiritual forces operate behind the scenes, influencing decisions, behaviors, and even entire systems, as we've seen with Hollywood's resistance to faith. But how can we identify this spiritual war? Sometimes it's subtle, like the discouragement we feel for no apparent reason or a sense of division in important relationships. Other times it's more evident, such as religious persecution and direct attacks on Christian values. Think of the countless reports of Christians worldwide who are imprisoned, tortured, or killed simply for professing their faith. For many, it's hard to believe this still happens in the 21st century, but the rise of anti-Christian sentiment, especially in Europe, is an alarming reality. It's impossible to ignore how this spiritual battle impacts our mindset. How many times have you caught yourself thinking, does my faith really make a difference, or is it worth continuing to fight for this? These doubts don't arise out of nowhere. They are part of a coordinated attack to weaken Christians' faith. However, the Bible gives us powerful weapons for this fight: prayer, the Word of God, and faith. 2 Corinthians 10:4-5 reminds us that the weapons we fight with are not the weapons of the world. On the contrary, they have divine power to demolish strongholds. And what about the strength we receive when we turn to God? Many testify that moments of prayer and reading the Bible are like recharging a spiritual battery. A practical example: if you feel like you're fighting an invisible battle, try starting your day with Psalm 91, which declares divine protection. Whoever dwells in the shelter of the Most High will rest in the shadow of the Almighty is a promise that calms the mind and strengthens the spirit. Finally, it's essential to understand that the spiritual war is not a solitary battle. The church, faith-filled friends, and fellowship with other Christians are fundamental to staying strong. As the video aptly points out, unity is crucial to face the prince of the power of the air mentioned in Ephesians, and this makes us reflect on those who, like Mel Gibson, dared to challenge the status quo, facing the world to proclaim spiritual truths that many prefer to ignore. Mel Gibson is a name that sparks curiosity and admiration, especially when it comes to his stance on faith in an environment as hostile as Hollywood. He doesn't just talk about his beliefs, he lives them, fully aware that it could cost him his reputation. In interviews, Gibson has shared how he views Hollywood, not just as a creative space, but as a spiritual battleground. He describes the conflict between good and evil as a fight for the soul of humanity, something that resonates deeply when we read Romans 12:2. Do not conform to the pattern of this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind. Gibson's authenticity goes beyond words. He's known for highlighting biblical themes in his work, such as in The Passion of the Christ, a film that sparked immense controversy but also reached millions with the message of the cross. His bold, often countercultural approach is a clear example of how courage can open doors to profound discussions. Imagine the impact that film had on people who may never have considered the pain and sacrifice of Jesus. It's as if, even in a hostile environment, the light still manages to pierce the darkness. Another point Gibson raises is Hollywood's hypocrisy in dealing with spiritual issues. He often mentions how Christianity is the only acceptable target for criticism and ridicule in the industry. The Bible, in 1 Peter 4:14, encourages us, "If you are insulted because of the name of Christ, you are blessed, for the Spirit of glory and of God rests on you." This perspective challenges Christians to remain steadfast, even when facing mockery or rejection. Gibson has also shared reflections on the apostles, men willing to die for what they believed. He argues that no one gives their life for a lie, and this is a crucial point often missing in discussions about Christianity's truth. The apostles' willingness to face persecution, torture, and even execution is undeniable evidence of Christ's resurrection. How can one not be inspired by Acts 5:41, where the disciples left the Sanhedrin, rejoicing because they had been counted worthy of suffering disgrace for the name? Finally, Gibson emphasizes the importance of recognizing that there's something much greater at play. He notes that the real battle isn't against people or institutions, but against spiritual forces. This invites us to reflect. How can we, like him, be bold in defending our faith, even when the environment around us is completely adversarial? This brings us to a powerful symbol, the sea with its chaos and unpredictability, a reflection of many spiritual battles. The sea has always been a fascinating and mysterious element. In the Bible, it often appears as a symbol of chaos, unpredictability, and even challenging spiritual forces. Think of Leviathan, mentioned in Job 41, a wild creature representing the sea's destructive power and humanity's struggle against divine control. This figure isn't just a mythological symbol, it mirrors the battles we face in life, where seemingly uncontrollable forces threaten our peace. The sea, like Leviathan, challenges order, but also reminds us of God's power, which reigns supreme. This symbolism of the sea goes beyond metaphor, it connects to reality. How often do we feel as if we're navigating stormy waters with no control over the circumstances around us? The unpredictable sea resembles crises that strike without warning, shaking our lives and forcing us to seek an anchor. In Psalm 107, verse 29, we read, "He stilled the storm to a whisper, the waves of the sea were hushed." This verse offers hope that even in the greatest storms, God has the power to bring peace. What about Revelation 21:1, where it said that in the new heaven and new earth there will be no more sea? For many scholars, this symbolizes the end of chaos and separation. After all, in antiquity, the sea wasn't just a source of mystery, but also of division and fear. Imagine a world without barriers, where chaos has been completely removed, and we can live in perfect harmony with God. This is the kind of hope that drives Christians to persevere, even when facing life's storms. An intriguing aspect is how this theme of the sea can apply to our daily lives. How often do people feel overwhelmed by the waves of financial struggles, complicated relationships, or existential doubts? Instead of battling these waves alone, we're invited to trust in God, who walks on water and calls us to do the same. A practical example? Start your day reflecting on Psalm 46:10. Be still and know that I am God. This is a powerful way to face chaos with serenity. Finally, the sea as a symbol of chaos reminds us that there's something beyond this disordered world. The video mentions how more than 80% of the ocean's depths remain unexplored, paralleling the vast mysteries of the spiritual realm. This prepares us for a deeper understanding of how archaeology reveals past mysteries that strengthen faith and challenge our limited understanding. Archaeology is one of the most fascinating tools for connecting the present to the past, especially when it comes to early Christianity. A striking example is the Megiddo mosaic, discovered beneath a prison in Israel, bearing the inscription, God, Jesus Christ. Dated to about 1800 years ago, this artifact is compelling evidence that early Christians recognized Jesus as God. Isn't it incredible how a piece of history, hidden for centuries, can shed light on the faith that shaped the world? The discovery echoes the words of Luke 19:40. If they keep quiet, the stones will cry out. But the Megiddo mosaic is just the tip of the iceberg. Other archaeological findings also validate the authenticity of biblical narratives. Mass graves containing marine fossils on mountaintops, for example, are often cited as evidence of a global event like the flood described in Genesis. For many, these discoveries not only confirm the historical accuracy of the Bible, but also remind us that much remains to be revealed. Each excavation is like opening a forgotten chapter of history. Additionally, it's fascinating to observe how these discoveries impact people's faith. For believers, they serve as powerful encouragement. For skeptics, they offer an invitation to reflect. Think of the apostles and the testimony they left behind. They didn't just preach, they lived and died for the message they believed in. Acts 4:20 captures this passion. For we cannot help speaking about what we have seen and heard. Now imagine how thrilling it is to find evidence that affirms what they preached. These discoveries aren't merely historical curiosities, they challenge us to consider how much we value our faith today. After all, if early Christians were willing to risk everything for their beliefs, are we also willing to live with the same intensity? The Megiddo mosaic, along with other evidence, reminds us that Christianity isn't just a collection of beautiful stories. It's a real movement that changed lives and continues to do so. Each artifact unearthed is a silent testimony to a story of faith that spans generations. As archaeology continues to uncover treasures, we wonder, what else lies buried, waiting to be discovered? These pieces of the past connect us directly to the apostles and the mission that began with them, but still resonates today. This reflection brings us to consider the hostility Christians still face, a reality that dates back to the very origins of Christianity. The statistics on the rise of anti-Christian sentiment in Europe are alarming and deeply revealing. In 2023, over 2,400 incidents were recorded, including persecutions, vandalism, and even physical attacks against Christians. France, the United Kingdom, and Germany lead this grim statistic. This reality reminds us of John 15:18-19, where Jesus warned, "If the world hates you, keep in mind that it hated me first." Persecution of Christianity is nothing new, but its growth in the 21st century is something that demands attention and reflection. This increase is more than just numbers. It reflects a cultural and spiritual shift. In many places, being a Christian is seen as outdated or even offensive. The video highlights examples of how biblical values are often ridiculed in media and public debates. This deeply affects young people trying to maintain their faith in an increasingly hostile environment. It's like living out Ephesians 6:13. "Therefore put on the full armor of God, so that when the day of evil comes, you may be able to stand your ground." How can Christians respond to this wave of intolerance? The answer lies in how we live out our faith, even in the face of opposition. History shows that the more Christians are persecuted, the more their faith grows. A practical example is the strengthening of house churches in countries where Christianity is illegal. These small groups demonstrate that even when freedom is denied, faith can flourish. Acts 5:41 narrates how the apostles, after being persecuted, left rejoicing because they had been counted worthy of suffering disgrace for the name. It's also crucial not to overlook the role of churches and Christian organizations in supporting those who face persecution. Imagine the impact of programs that help displaced families or provide legal support to those unjustly accused for their beliefs. These acts of solidarity not only strengthen the persecuted, but also serve as a testimony to the world of the power of Christian love. As 1 John 4:18 says, "There is no fear in love, but perfect love drives out fear." Ultimately, the rise in hostility serves as a reminder that we live in times of clear choices. Being a Christian today requires courage, determination, and unshakable trust in God. As we face challenges, the question remains: how can we turn this resistance into an opportunity to strengthen our faith and share the gospel? This brings us to the role of faith in moments of adversity, where its power becomes most evident. Faith is one of the most powerful anchors when everything around us seems to crumble. In times of adversity, whether natural disasters, persecution, or personal loss, faith reminds us that there is something greater than the temporary chaos. Proverbs 19:21 tells us, "Many are the plans in a person's heart, but it is the Lord's purpose that prevails." This truth offers powerful comfort, reaffirming that even in destruction, God is in control. In calamities, it's natural to feel powerless, yet faith invites us to act, even when all seems lost. Consider those who have lost everything to wildfires or floods, but found the strength to start over because they believed God was with them. Psalm 23:4 reflects this confidence. "Even though I walk through the darkest valley, I will fear no evil, for you are with me." This assurance transforms the way we face challenges, giving us the courage to move forward. Faith also teaches us to be instruments of hope for others. When we see someone suffering, our response shouldn't just be empathy, but action. Imagine the impact of small gestures like offering shelter, food, or even a word of encouragement. James 2:17 reminds us, "Faith by itself, if it is not accompanied by action, is dead." In these moments, faith is not just an internal belief, but something tangible, expressed in acts of love and service. Faith also helps us reinterpret adversity. Instead of seeing destruction as the end, we can view it as an opportunity for renewal. It's like a tree scorched by fire that still finds the strength to sprout again. Isaiah 43:19 declares, "See, I am doing a new thing. Now it springs up. Do you not perceive it? I am making a way in the wilderness and streams in the wasteland." This perspective reminds us that God specializes in turning tragedies into triumphs. Ultimately, faith doesn't eliminate difficulties, but gives us the strength to face them. It connects us to something greater, something eternal. In our hardest moments, faith acts as a reminder that, even when the world is in ruins, there is a living hope. This hope reflects how we perceive the influence of major cultural narratives, such as the stories told by the media, which shape our understanding of what truly matters. The media plays an undeniable role in shaping how we see the world, particularly how we view faith and religion. Movies, TV shows, news, and even memes shape narratives that often conflict with Christian values. It's notable how Christianity is frequently targeted for criticism or caricature, while other beliefs are treated with greater reverence. This reflects John 15:18. If the world hates you, keep in mind that it hated me first. This cultural rejection isn't new, but its intensity has grown in recent years. Take, for example, awards shows like the Golden Globes, where sarcastic speeches and ironic comments about God often draw laughter from the audience. The normalization of such attitudes in media influences society to see faith as outdated or irrelevant. On the other hand, we rarely see deep discussions or respectful representations of Christian faith in popular productions. This lack of balance creates a one-sided narrative, where religion is often portrayed as a weakness rather than a strength. However, it's not all negative. There are also examples of productions that highlight Christian values in impactful ways. Films like Fireproof and God's Not Dead offer stories that inspire and strengthen faith. These examples show that media can be a powerful tool for conveying spiritual truths. Romans 12:21 encourages us, "Do not be overcome by evil, but overcome evil with good." Creating content that exalts biblical principles is a way to counter prevailing narratives. Moreover, media's influence challenges us to be critical consumers. We can't passively accept every message presented to us. Instead, we must filter these messages through a biblical perspective. Imagine how this could change the way we view movies, TV shows, or even news. Philippians 4:8 offers valuable guidance. Finally, brothers and sisters, whatever is true, whatever is noble, whatever is right, whatever is pure, whatever is lovely, whatever is admirable, if anything is excellent or praiseworthy, think about such things. The impact of media on religious perceptions prompts us to reflect on our responsibility as Christians in a world saturated with conflicting messages. How can we use our voices and creativity to bring balance to these narratives? This ties directly to the testimony of the apostles, who faced enormous challenges but boldly proclaimed the truth with courage and conviction. The apostles of Christ serve as powerful examples of unshakable faith and conviction. They endured persecution, imprisonment, and even death because they refused to deny the gospel. The video poses an important question. Why would anyone be willing to die for a lie? This reinforces the authenticity of their testimony. In Acts 4:19-20, Peter and John declare, "Which is right in God's eyes, to listen to you or to him." As for us, we cannot help speaking about what we have seen and heard. Their stance not only validates Jesus' resurrection, but also serves as a model for Christians who face opposition today. The impact of their testimony is immeasurable. Consider the early Christian church. In a hostile world without the religious freedoms we often take for granted, the faith spread like wildfire. The apostles' courage was the seed of a movement that changed the world. Imagine what could happen if we embraced the same boldness in our lives. Whether at work, school, or on social media, we're called to be the light in the darkness, as described in Matthew 5:14. You are the light of the world. The apostles' conviction challenges us to evaluate our own faith. To what extent are we willing to endure discomfort for what we believe? Many of us avoid conflict to maintain peace, But the apostles' story shows that true peace comes from aligning with God's will, even if it means facing opposition. James 1:2-3 encourages us, "Consider it pure joy, my brothers and sisters, whenever you face trials of many kinds, because you know that the testing of your faith produces perseverance." Moreover, the apostles teach us that Christian testimony is more than words, it's action. They didn't just preach, they lived what they preached. This authenticity drew many to the faith, even in times of persecution. Today, we have the opportunity to do the same, whether by helping someone in need, defending biblical values, or sharing Christ's love through small acts. As 1 John 3:18 says, "Dear children, let us not love with words or speech, but with actions and in truth." Ultimately, the apostles' conviction reminds us that we're part of a continuous mission. They were the first witnesses of the resurrection, but that responsibility now falls to us. The question is, how can we, in our daily lives, reflect the same passion and commitment they demonstrated? This reflection ties everything together, reminding us that each topic discussed here connects to a greater calling to live a genuine and impactful faith. Now that you've explored each of these topics, it's impossible not to reflect on how these messages affect your life. The wildfires, the resistance to faith, the spiritual battles, and the apostles' testimonies aren't just stories or distant events. They're living reminders that there's a greater purpose for each of us. So here's the ultimate question. What will you do with this knowledge? Will you continue living indifferently, or will you use this truth to transform your life and the world around you? Think about the decisions you make daily. Do they reflect the values you believe in? When the next storm comes, will you be anchored in faith, or will you be swept away by the chaos? Challenge yourself to live like the apostles, with courage, conviction, and purpose. Start today. Pray for wisdom, study the Word, and find practical ways to share this light with those around you. Small actions, when aligned with God's will, have the power to change lives. And of course, if you want to keep learning, growing, and diving deeper into these themes, subscribe to the channel. Turn on notifications and join this community that seeks the truth. After all, the world may be in chaos, but you have the opportunity to be the change it needs.